Okay, good Saturday morning, everyone. My name is Maggie Green. I'm the Media Relations Manager for the City of KCMO. We're very excited today to be here with all of you and talk about our sidewalk program, give an update on what we've been up to, some of the things that we will be working on in the future, and also preview some additional public engagement opportunities that will be happening over the summer. So we have a few slides today that we'll go through, but we will have plenty of time for conversation and questions. You can engage with us through the chat box today. You can also raise your hand and use that function as well. So please feel free to utilize that throughout the presentation, and then we'll leave time at the end for questions and discussion as well. We are curious who is here today. So if you're representing a neighborhood group, an organization, or just yourself, feel free to pop that information in the chat for us so we understand who's in the audience today. But with that, I'll go ahead and kick off our slides here. We have a few people from the project team that will be presenting today. My colleague Uday Manapali, who's our Sidewalk Program Manager in Public Works. Again, I'm Maggie Green, the Media Relations Manager. We have Mr. John Zimmerman, Project Manager for Trans Systems for our one of our sidewalk projects, and Therese Pendleton, who's a planner with Vireo. We also have Jackie and Maddie, who will be helping us today from Vireo as well, kind of monitoring the chat for us today. But we're very excited to be here today to talk about all things sidewalks. We know that sidewalks in all of our neighborhoods around the city are a very high priority. We also recognize there are different needs and challenges depending on where you are in the city as it pertains to sidewalks. So we will be walking through several things today and hearing from you about what your concerns and ideas are with sidewalks. So really quick, just some housekeeping items. We are about exactly 2 years into the pandemic, so I think a lot of us are familiar with virtual meeting setting, but we will ask that you please stay muted unless you're called on to speak. As a reminder, you can use the chat function to engage with us or use the raise hand button as well if you have a question, and then we'll kind of open it up at the end for discussion as well. We are recording the meeting. This is our final and fourth meeting for sidewalks engagement this spring. The other 3 meetings are also post this recording. So if you want to reference back to it, or if someone that you know wants to hear this information that wasn't able to join us, that information will be posted, this recording, on our sidewalk website. And we'll put that information in the chat for you as well. Already talked about the chat box. Yes, we'll stick to about 1 hour for the meeting. I think with the small group here, we'll be able to get through what we have and hopefully have plenty of time at the end for discussion. If you have questions after we're done, if something comes up or we aren't able to get to a concern or question that you have, please do feel free to reach out to myself or Uday. We're very responsive and we love to make sure that our residents have information and they're equipped with the services and programs and information. So feel free to reach out to us afterwards if you have ongoing questions or concerns. So this should say today, because I guess we're in the morning here, but today's meeting will go through several things. We'll provide a background information on the Go KC Sidewalk Program, as well as kind of talk through what we've been up to, some of our progress to date. We've been hard at work. We've got thousands of miles of sidewalk in the city, so there's a lot to do, but we have done a lot over the last few years, and we're proud of that, those accomplishments. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll discuss a little bit what we've learned and heard. Uday and myself have gone to dozens and dozens, probably near 50 neighborhood meetings, council district meetings, various community sessions, to just listen to people what their challenges are for sidewalks. And so we've learned a lot and we've heard a lot from the community, and we want to continue that conversation, which is why we're having this session today and why we will have upcoming sessions this summer as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We will be previewing the next steps, which involves a comprehensive sidewalk plan. So we're at a very unique point with the sidewalk program where we're kind of catching up with some of the backlog of sidewalk repairs, and we're really looking to what the strategy is for sidewalk repair in the future. So we're going to share a little bit of information about where we're headed and how you can engage with that process. And while we're here, we do want to talk a little bit about Vision Zero at the end. We just have a couple slides to kind of talk with you about what that program is and how it relates to sidewalks, our infrastructure for pedestrians, making our streets and sidewalks safer for everyone. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end. And then, of course, leave plenty of time for questions and answers. With that, I'm going to kick it over to my colleague Uday to talk about the history of the program.
Good morning, everyone. Uday Manipalli with Public Works. Just a quick background about the sidewalk program. In 2017, when the GEO bond was passed, or some people may call it the Go KC bond, overall $150 million was allocated to sidewalks over a period of 20 years. That translates to like 7.5 million. But the main takeaway from that bond passage was there will be no more assessments for the homeowners. That was eliminated, and the city would create and use the fund for sidewalk repairs throughout the city. Next slide, please. Yeah, and if you're looking at that breakdown of 7.5 million, the program is broadly classified into two categories. One is a 2.5 million focused on ADA repairs. So any accessibility issues at the intersections, those are the ones we are focusing on. We have a big list of repairs. We probably do like 200 of them every year. We have over 2,000 to be repaired. And the other one is the $5 million per year for the sidewalk program, which is what we are focused today. So in 2017, the council has directed the city to work on the repairs which were reported via 311 between 2008 and 2016. And we called it as backlog. Most likely you hear this term. And it's to start repairing spots of sidewalks within a block where they are out of repair. We started with that with just property, but we thought that is not the right way to do it. So we expanded it to the entire block wherever repairs need to be made. We are continuing this program. We will finish that by 2025. While we are doing this, we also identified that we don't have an inventory and the conditions of the sidewalk throughout the city. So we started inspecting the sidewalks, and we are going to do that for the next, at least the first round will be the next 5 to 6 years. John will talk a little bit more about those design inspections. Last year, we started with the PIAC match fund. So PIAC, we can match the PIAC fund, but there is a limit to it. And we did a little bit of initiatives. I'll talk more in the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. We just covered this. So talking about the initiatives, there were two major things which we did. One is a low-cost technique. So previously, our arsenal of tools were, if there is a sidewalk repair, we would replace that sidewalk panel, and then or we just leave it as is. But what we have done is we looked around the cities around Kansas City and in other areas in United States, and we found maybe we can use a different technique, and which is what you are seeing on the screen. So they have a patented technology where they cut the sidewalk. So the depth of the sidewalk is different, but the tripping hazards are reduced. That will increase the life for another 10-15 years, but also remove the tripping hazards. We started as a pilot program in one neighborhood, and it was really, the benefit to cost is really good. It's almost 8 times than replacement of the sidewalk. Having said that, you can't use it everywhere. There are some challenges to it, especially near trees. And that led to our next initiative. If you go to the next slide. In most part of the city, you see our trees are, especially in older neighborhoods, we have big trees between the sidewalk and the curb, and they are buckling the sidewalks. So our options were literally remove the tree or go around the tree. But some areas, this is not possible. So we had to cut down the tree, even though it is healthy. So we partnered with UMKC, Gunter Construction, and Rubberway, who are the owners of that, who have the patent technology on that product, which is environmental friendly. It is made from recycled rubber. We use that on Benton Boulevard on one block this year. So the idea is you still pour the sidewalk, but the trees have the ability to breathe there, so they won't start buckling. So this has been used in different parts of United States. We are going to test it until end of the year because we have too many freeze thaw cycles, and we wanted to make sure this is a viable product for us in Kansas City. Once we have the results by end of 2022, we may go a full-fledged implementation. So there will be a combination of concrete and this throughout the city, and we will fit where and when it is needed. Next slide.
Before we switch gears here, I do just want to add and emphasize how important it is for Public Works in the city to be innovative with some of these repair techniques and materials. It is something that we're committed to trying new things and figuring out more cost-effective ways for sidewalk repair, and also listening to the community about a lot of the feedback we've heard is, well, the trees are causing the issue, but we also want to save the trees. So I think it just speaks to sort of the innovative, place that the Public Works Department's coming from, wanting to try and test out these new ideas. So let us know what you think. Use the chat if you've seen some of these pilots. If you're interested in them, if you have other ideas, feel free to share your ideas in the chat, and we'll talk about it at the end. But with that, I'm going to kick it over to Mr. John Zimmerman to cover next.
Thanks, Maggie. With the passage of the GO bond, the city became responsible for 4,000 miles of sidewalk, and that's a massive system. To put that in perspective, that's enough sidewalk to go from Kansas City to Alaska. So the city needed to inventory that system to review the condition and understand how to best manage it. And the GO bond required a systematic sidewalk inspection program that was data-driven. And that was to improve the equity of the program by using data to prioritize the inspection, not the construction, but the inspection. The city worked with residents and community leaders to develop a list of characteristics to identify the most important sidewalks. And by following the best practices of other cities and shaping those to fit Kansas City's needs, the final system was adopted where the city could put a priority to all the sidewalks in the system. Next slide. And here are the priority characteristics that were identified, and it includes things like proximity to schools, libraries, transit facilities, and other similar locations. The real key to the system, though, is the relative weighting of each of these. For instance, a sidewalk that's near a community center is something that's going to serve the social and health programs for pedestrians and people who use wheelchairs and other mobility devices. And as such, that was given the highest rating of an 8, so the highest importance factor of an 8. And you can see sidewalk in densely populated areas was also considered important, but less so than the community center access. So the maximum score that was assigned was a 5. And all of these characteristics and their weighting were assembled into the city's GIS database to determine the priority of each sidewalk segment. The sidewalk segments were then grouped into 5 priority levels, with 1 being the highest level. This map and the rating system on the left, this is on the city's webpage for sidewalks, and when I get through my slides, I'll put that in the chat. Next slide, please. To complete the inventory reviews, the city hired 3 consultant teams, and they were tasked with reviewing the sidewalks, ramps, curbs, and other related items for each of the priorities. And the city encouraged the use of innovations to enhance the data collection and reduce the cost. Some of the field reviews have been completed in the field by traditional methods, just people walking through the streets, measuring the sidewalk cracks and bumps. My team also used a Segway, which is shown in this picture, and it's outfitted with devices to help measure the conditions of the sidewalk as they drive down the sidewalk. Another team used a truck-mounted scanner that would scan a 3D model of the sidewalk. And the other team used a drone mounted scanner to generate a 3D model of the sidewalk as well. The 3D models are taken back to the office where technicians can analyze the data to determine the repair needs. And regardless of how the data was collected, all of it was finalized in a consistent format for the city's GIS. So when Uday or anyone at the city wants to look at the data, it's consistent all the way through. The city required formal quality control checks throughout the process. After the first 25 miles of each application, we stopped, did a spot check, the city checked it. And then when the final data was submitted, there was another check from the city. And all of that was important so that there would be a consistent assessment of sidewalk condition throughout the 3 zones. Next slide, please. And the goal of the field reviews was really to determine where the sidewalk was out of repair. The reviews identified where sidewalks had surface cracks of 1/4 inch or more. Displacement was also documented for tripping hazards of 1/4 inch and severe vertical displacements of 1 inch or higher. And sidewalks with rough or spalling surfaces were also documented. And many other items were documented, such as ponding, unapproved materials, driveways, retaining walls, landscaping, and even other items. Sidewalk ramps were reviewed for the same criteria as the sidewalks, with additional information about if there was an ADA detectable surface present, if there was an actual ramp to the street level, and if there were utilities within the ramp. That occurs in a lot of locations where a telephone pole or a fire hydrant might be in the way of the ramp. So those were recorded. Street curbs were also recorded for their condition and ponding. And then trees that were within a few feet of the sidewalk were identified, especially those that were obstructing or damaging the sidewalk. Those were noted as well. Next slide, please. As I said, each consultant team was assigned 1/3 of the city to review, and most have reviewed the levels or the priority levels 1 through 3. And so far, the data has confirmed the assumption of the older areas of the city will have a high percentage of sidewalks and ramps out of repair. In the central portion of the city, nearly 45% of the sidewalk ramps have 1 or more repair issues. This doesn't mean they need to be replaced right away, but just that they're showing their age and they've got repair conditions. And with each completed review, the city has a better inventory of the condition of their sidewalk system. So that's why it's so important to complete these inspections. And this map on this slide shows the recorded points of repair needed. And this is interactive. This is the current map. And as inspections go forward, this map gets updated. And this is also available on the KCMO website, and it's interactive, so you can zoom in all the way down to your street or to your house if you want. Just note that there is always some discrepancy between the GIS coordinate systems. So even though a sidewalk repair node might be off the sidewalk or in your front yard or out in the street, it's actually on the sidewalk, so that's normal. And I'll drop a link into that to the chat. And all of this is important in our public engagement of this program. So with that, I'll turn it over to Reese to explain that more.
Really quick, Therese, if I could just add here from the city's perspective, how important it is to have this data. John talked through it a little bit, but before the GeoBond sidewalk program, we did not have an inventory of our sidewalks at all. And so the fact that the GeoBond program is allowing us to really inventory all the sidewalks across the city is hugely important to inform sidewalk repair in the future. So we're very thankful for the voters that approved the GeoBond, but also for our consultant partners who've been helping us collect this data because it's one of the primary pieces that's going to inform sidewalk repair in the future. So with that, I'll kick it over to Therese to cover next.
Thanks, Maggie. Talking about sidewalk repair, what's getting ready to happen with the sidewalk program, et cetera, all of that was the focus of the 50 or so meetings that we've had for the sidewalk program over time. What I want to share with you are just a snapshot of some of the feedback that we heard. And a lot of it had to do with questions about the program and what's happening. We had meetings, there were phone calls, emails, people were communicating in a variety of ways. But on the next slide, you'll see a sampling of some of the questions that people were asking. And one of the things had to do with what's the goal of the program? Are we talking about continuous repair for all neighborhood sidewalks, or are we doing spot repair? And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that people could see in their neighborhood spot repair happening and wanting to know more about that. They also were asking about tree removal. There were people who came to the public meeting who had photos of trees that had upheaved because of the roots their sidewalks. And so they wanted to know what was happening with that. And so now we've got that new strategy or the new initiative that Uday was talking about with the rubber to help address that. People also wanted to know what was going to be happening with the blocks that are without sidewalks. When you look at the map, and we've put a link in the chat so you can see that map in more detail, that has to do with existing sidewalks. If you see something that's not covered, it will get covered. All the sidewalks in Kansas City will get covered. That map represents progress, but what about those that don't have sidewalks? That was a question. And so Jackie or Maddie will put into the chat the link to PIAC, which is the Public Improvement Advisory Committee, which is the way that you can get sidewalks in your neighborhood. It's a process, but you can go through that process to try to get sidewalks in your neighborhood if you don't already have them. People were also asking about how long the inspections are going to take, basically how long the program is, and Uday did a great job talking about the number of years that are going to be necessary to go through this. They're also wanting to know about information and where is that going to be and putting that out really early so people can have access to that. And so the link to the sidewalk website is also in the chat. And we're putting all of our information, our meeting recordings, data that we find and that we uncover, our findings, et cetera, is all on that webpage. At the same time, we know that the GO bond isn't going to go forever. And so people are wanting to know how are we going to continue to go forward and what is the commitment to the urban core. And so thinking about the future has always got to be part of anything that you plan and design. But for right now, we know that we'll be able to. We have a program through 2037, and then we'll have to explore what to do in the future. Something else that people were wanting is interactive reporting, and that's why John was talking to you about the map. And he was talking to you about how you can go into that. And since we're still working on doing all of that work, you'll be able to see how it changes and how more dots begin to appear on the map. Now, two of the other things that people were really interested in when we had our last series of public meetings and conversations had to do with priority. So you saw that slide before, and we're talking about priorities 1 through 5. People wanted to understand more about how those priorities are going to be used as sidewalks are repaired and built. They also had questions about equity. If you are part of the conversations related to the Kansas City Comprehensive Plan called the Spirit Playbook, and we'll put a link to the chat for that as well. In those conversations, their equity is a big topic for people, and so that's also coming up. LifeX is another framework that can be used for equity. You may have heard that the Parks and Recreation Department is using LifeX to help develop what they're calling park-centric plans, and they're working with UMKC and neighborhood leaders to do that. LifeX zip codes are the ones that are, you see significantly less, 10 years less life expectancy and poor health outcomes. Those two factors can be used as measures of equity, and there are others that can be used. So folding equity and priority and how you determine that is a big part of how we figure out how to go forward with the sidewalk program. And so Uday will talk about that and the rest of the path forward.
Thank you, Therese. So as Maggie and Therese we were talking about, we went to a lot of meetings. We heard a common theme across the board that whenever the GeoBond was passed, a lot of people were not, their voices were not considered. The community engagement need to be more. And that's one of the key factors which we are going to focus on when we are going to come up with a comprehensive plan. And with the comprehensive plan, this dictates the next 1, 5, and 10-year plan. And again, this will start in 2025, but we are at this transition phase and we want to be prepared well in advance when we hit the ground in 2025. at some of the factors we are looking at is, again, major thing is community engagement. And the other thing is shortest path analysis, which talks about, so in Kansas City, different districts have different needs. Like in Council District 3 and 4, we have sidewalks that need to be repaired. In Council District 1 and 5, we don't have sidewalks. So we need connectivity to the sidewalks. So our goal is to connect transit stations, schools, and anything which people need. We hired a consultant. They're going to perform the analysis, and that's the goal. So get all these into consideration for connectivity between point A to point B. If a sidewalk is missing in that point A to point B, we are going to add new sidewalks. If sidewalks need to be repaired, we are going to repair those sidewalks. Equity is another big factor, because some of the areas in the city, they need more importance than other areas in the city. We will still consider our inspection priority, which John shared, and the condition score. They will have some weightage, but it's not going to be a maximum. The specific weightage details will be presented to every one of you as and when we unfold those details. We also found that there are a lot of pedestrian and bike crashes in the city, so we are going to consider that. So all these factors will be presented and considered, and then a construction matrix will be provided that will dictate our 1 5-year plan, 1 5 and 10-year plan. Obviously, we also want to have some shovel-ready projects, so construction evaluation will also take place. Stakeholder inputs like your council district representatives for PIAC and your council members will consider it. So one key takeaway I would like to say in this meeting is, please try to attend one of your council district meetings and provide us the feedback during the community engagement. Specific dates will be provided, but tentatively it will be in spring, like May to August, we'll have those meetings. One will be virtual, one will be in district. If you can't make to both of them, you can attend another council district meeting as well. But we would like to have people present their inputs and whatever they need to do during their council district meeting. Next slide, please. Yeah, the next step is we'll continue our inspections and we'll continue work on the backlogs. But the key thing is, in the next few months, we'll have these 12 meetings, and we definitely need all your inputs on coming up with our sidewalk comprehensive plan. Next slide.
And before I switch gears again, I would just add and emphasize the importance of this public engagement over the next several months, because as Uday was alluding to, the sidewalk challenges from neighborhood to neighborhood and council district to council district are very different, and we're now at the point where we can sort of tailor our approach, tailor the strategy to what's going to make the most sense for our different neighborhoods. And so all the data that we're going to be collecting, the conversations we'll be having, will really help inform sort of the most comprehensive, equitable sidewalk plan and repair into the future. Okay, so we just have a couple slides left. We're switching gears a little bit to talk about Vision Zero. And what Vision Zero is sort of a national, even international movement or philosophy about looking at our streets and our sidewalks in sort of a slightly different way to ensure safety is paramount. Our goal here in Kansas City is to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries on our streets by 2030. We've seen a pretty alarming trend in Kansas City over the last decade. Fatal crashes on our streets have gone up 42% in the last 10 years. So 42% increase in fatal crashes in the last 10 years, 25% increase in serious injuries in the last 10 years. So those trends are extremely alarming to us as city staff, also our elected officials, the mayor, our new city manager. So about a year and a half or so ago, they passed a Vision Zero policy that kind of outlined several steps that we're going to take and we are taking in Kansas City to ensure that our streets are safe and accessible for everyone moving around the city. Some of the pieces that are included in this policy and that we're working on right now include collecting data and really using crash data to identify where our improvements are happening. And that crash information is very important because that helps us be very intentional and equitable about where our improvements go, really prioritizing areas that need those safety improvements most. And so that's something you'll see reflected in the next slide about where we're doing improvements this year. We're also looking at things like how do we reduce speeds across the city? We know that higher speeds on streets contributes to those fatal crashes. And so areas where we can do traffic calming, look at lower speed limits, that's something we're discussing and looking at right now. Of course, engagement is an important piece to our, everything we do at the city, and it's something we're actively trying to do better every day. But that is something we'll also look at is how we engage residents, from anyone who's driving to someone using the bus to someone walking or biking. Engaging residents around Vision Zero is very important. Of course, just like with the sidewalk program, we're really looking to evaluate these outcomes, making sure that the improvements we are making actually do improve safety. And as I mentioned, really doing a data-driven approach and prioritizing the improvements where they're needed most. Placing equity at the forefront is a huge piece of this. How Vision Zero ties to sidewalks and the sidewalk program, I think Vision Zero really is taking a look at the way we're designing and engineering all of our infrastructure. And we know that we have some neighborhoods that are very high rates of people walking around, walking for transportation. So Vision Zero and pedestrian safety and in making sure that our intersections and streets and sidewalks are safer for people walking around is a very big component of Vision Zero, and something we're trying to tie it together so that we have a comprehensive transportation strategy at KCMO. So a couple things that we're planning this year. The last slide that I have here in 1 second is actually public engagement opportunities this coming week, Tuesday evening and Wednesday. So you'll see that in just a second, but those meetings will be dedicated to talking about what we're doing for Vision Zero this year. Our focus is on low cost, high impact projects that we can do quickly, but we know that we'll have sort of an immediate safety improvement at these locations. So we're looking at some major intersections that have had the highest crashes in KCMO. Those are listed here. We're also looking at upgrades to traffic signals so that they're safer for pedestrians, giving the person walking more time to cross the street. We are also adding bike lanes to make sure that we are continually building out our bike network in a protected way for people who get around our city via bike. And then, of course, something else we've heard a lot is from neighborhoods wanting to slow down traffic on their neighborhood street. We hear a lot from neighborhoods all over the city that cars travel too fast down their neighborhood street, and we have kids walking or neighbors walking to the bus stop or just on a walk for exercise. So really figuring out a strategy to calm traffic on our neighborhood streets. So we've got a little over 50 locations planned. That work will be starting here soon. And this is just sort of the first year of projects. We intend year after year, as long as we have funding for Vision Zero, to do very similar approach in neighborhoods all over the city, kind of using that crash data, using public input to really help inform where these safety improvements go. So we're very excited to get these much needed improvements out the door. Starting here in the next month or two is when we will begin construction on some of these improvements. So if you're interested in this topic, Vision Zero, next week, like I said, here in just a couple days, we have an open house on Tuesday. That's in person, and then we'll have a virtual version on Wednesday. To talk about those improvements and go into detail on what it is that we're improving at some of these intersections. So with that, that kind of concludes our formal presentation today. But I do see a few people, there's a few notes in the chat. So Therese, I don't know if you want to help us work through the comment or two that's in the chat,
Sure.
And then we'll open it up for discussion.
Sure, we just have one comment in the chat so far. It's from Jenny, and she's saying that she put in a PIAC for new sidewalks for the next 20 years, and maybe we'll have most of our neighborhood with sidewalks. Then we'll have to start over and put in for repairs. This is most discouraging. All the students to our elementary and middle schools have to ride the bus because our neighborhood is too dangerous to walk. Are there other sidewalk programs we can apply for? We have dropped the link to PIAC into the chat. I know that's a long period of time. The Rebuild KC program has now closed in terms of applications. What do y'all recommend?
Hey, Jenny, thank you for the question. So the sidewalk comprehensive plan is one of the avenues, I would say, where we would like to voice your opinion, and that would be considered. I'm also curious, do you have an address or the neighborhood which you are talking about, so I can do some more, find some more details and get back to you. You can send me an email or you can just put it in the chat.
And I will add to just, we reference PIAC a lot and wanted to just share a couple of, success stories and ways that we work with PIAC in the sidewalk program. So we have an open line of communication with the PIAC representatives. There's two PIAC representatives for each council district. And they're, appointed, and those are the folks that kind of read through the applications and help make recommendations. And the sidewalk team is working very closely to make sure that we can leverage the funding, leverage the GeoBond sidewalk funding, leverage the PIAC funding. We've got, a few neighborhoods like in the 4th district and the 1st district that really do take a look at the data we provide for sidewalks, and that helps them inform those PIAC sidewalk projects. So just worth noting that our staff works very closely with the PIAC team and those PIAC representatives to make sure that we can get the most out of our dollars that go towards sidewalks. But at this point, if we don't have any other comments or questions in the chat itself, if anyone wants to unmute and offer a comment or a question, we can kind of have an open discussion for the next couple minutes.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go first. Ron Clark, lifelong Kansas City resident, resident of the 4th district. I'm kind of curious. This is like maybe like a personal curiosity question, but how do you guys do contract administration on these sidewalk contracts? Like, who actually handles, I guess, like working with the contractors, coordinating the building, and like the money and all that?
Great question. So there are multiple folds to it. And if you're talking about just the construction piece, we have an open procurement process, and it depends upon how much funds are allocated. So let's say it's like 500,000 is allocated for sidewalk repairs in the neighborhood. So what we do is we put all the documents together as the project manager, whoever is it, and he reaches out to a procurement team. And our procurement team puts an open bid. So anyone who is qualified to put the bid, they can bid it. And once we usually go with the lowest and best bidders, and once the project is awarded, then we'll meet the contractor on site and go through, hey, what are the repairs that need to be made? Usually we have an inspector on site who reviews the work that is being done by the contractor to make sure it follows our code, the city's code and standards. And that's how the project is completed. There's a walkthrough, and then there's a 2-year warranty for each of the constructed projects.
No, that makes sense. I was just curious. I've noticed, at least in one of the sidewalk projects over here, kind of in our part of town, I'll just be specific. When they redid the sidewalks on 23rd and Drury, and down the side of like 24th Street over there by Drury, for one, I know that they had to do some rebuilding over there because there was stuff that was like in violation, but also just like the amount of sidewalk that they removed at a given time, like the way that it affected people's access to their driveways over an extended period of time. And I mean, I work in the industry, so I know how like construction can go. But I was just curious, like I guess like how stretched your inspection staff might be in terms of like getting to some of that stuff.
So you picked 24th and Drury. That's a different story altogether. I can provide you a little bit of details. So we had some issues with the contractor, and we had to stop. We asked them to stop doing the work. So we we reached out to the surety. We are trying to work out the details. We will have a new contractor in place, and then they are going to finish up the job. Uh, I personally was there on 24th and jury. There are a couple of people who have accessibility issues on that block, and I personally helped one guy push the wheelchair because he was stuck between the driveway approach and the street because we didn't finish the work. There, unfortunately, there is nothing we could do at that point. But in the next few weeks, we are going to come back and patch the asphalt where, and the accessibility issues will be resolved. But we usually don't have those kind of issues, but that's a very particular case. And to a second question on inspectors. So when I started with the city, just for sidewalk inspections in the neighborhood, we had like 10 inspectors in my group. Now I have only one inspector. So that's how it is. And it's because of retirements, there are better opportunities, better pay outside. So it is very hard to retain people to work for the city. Uh, it is what it is. So we are trying to work. But on 24th and Dury, I think in the next few weeks, you will see that we will at least finish up what we started there.
No, thank you. Thank you for the thorough answer. I appreciate that. And everything you guys have done in terms of like presenting this morning. It's been very informative.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
And Jenny, I noted down your phone number. I'll probably give you a call Monday or Tuesday, and we can talk a little bit more.
Does anyone else have any other comments or questions that they'd like to offer? Otherwise, we might wrap up a little bit early today.
Yeah, we're a small group, so don't be shy if you have a question, or if you have something that you want to say about the project and the program.
While we're waiting, the other thing I just want to reemphasize and add is we will be, as Uday mentioned, publishing the dates for the later spring and summer engagement sessions on the city's website and social media. We'll be doing email blasts as well. So, if you have yourself or neighbors are interested in this topic, again, we really know that community engagement and your feedback is going to be critical to informing the comprehensive sidewalk plan and our repairs in the future. So stay tuned for that information. We're hoping in the next few weeks we'll have those dates to start to be scheduled throughout the city.
Also, if you know your neighborhood association or neighborhood group's name, please drop that in the chat. What do you think, Maggie? We have 14 minutes to go. It's Saturday, and the weather is beautiful today. And we've had a consistent 3 people who gave us some of their Saturday time today.
Yes, I think with that, we will formally conclude. I'm going to stop our recording. But sort of in closing, just want to thank everyone for joining us for our 4th and final sidewalk program update. This meeting will be posted on our website, and we will also put more information there about upcoming engagement sessions. So I'm going to officially stop our recording and thank everyone again for joining us today.